Hi, I'm Debbie from the Quilt Journal, and today we're going to be working on some cross hatching. One of the most difficult things I think as a new quilter is working your backgrounds in around your appliques or your embroidery designs or whatever wherever you need to work that background in. When you have a real obstacle that you have to work around, that just takes a little practice and getting used to. I came across a bunch of these stitch outs from an old quilt that I did probably 10 or 15 years ago, and took them out and sandwiched them up, and I thought this was a great opportunity to do a little tutorial on cross hatching and working that in around your embroideries or appliques. I'm going to be using a couple things today. Cindy Needham has the Ultimate Stencil set, and I'm going to be using her square Ultimate Stencil just to mark my 90-degree marks and my diagonal marks without having to do any math whatsoever. It does all the work for it, which makes it quick and easy and gets me going and doing what I want to do, which is quilting. And then the other thing that I'm going to use today is a stencil that is put out by the Stencil Company. It is a half-inch grid cross-hatching stencil that's already on the diagonal. But what makes it really nice, if you mark your quilt, that you're able to slide it from one side to the next and line it up perfectly. So we're going to do a little bit of that and get started and get quilting. All right, here we go. Okay, so real quick, marking with the Ultimate Stencil, just so that you get some guidelines. In the interest of time, I went ahead and just did that, but on this particular stitch out, you can see in the middle of the flower, it makes it really obvious what the center of my design or my block is going to be. I match that up in the middle, and then I don't mark all the lines that are on here. I just marked the halfway point on the top and across, and then I did the 45-degree angles coming up on each side so that I have my block cut into eighths all the way around, so that the next step, when it comes time for you to line up your cross hatching, you have marks already there that you can line up going through that, and it keeps you from running off and getting all catawampus. So, okay, on to the next part. Let me get marking this, and I'll show you what we have. Okay, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on marking your stencil. I just want to point out a couple things. I want you to notice that I do pin my stencils down, that no matter how careful I am, they do end up shifting as I go ahead and I mark my stencil. Also be aware that a fine tip tends to be a little better, that you can get it right down in there, and your lines will be on, and try to remember that you're not kind of mushing it one way or another. I am not saying that the stencils are the only way to go on this. You can use the good old-fashioned ruler and draw your halfway marks and diagonals, and then go ahead and measure off every half inch or quarter inch or whatever kind of a grid line you'd like to do. The purpose of this video is just to expose you to a few things that are just a little bit quicker, easier to get you to that sewing machine quilting faster and hopefully more accurate. All right, here we go to the next phase. Okay, here I am. I've got my long arm quilting ruler here, and I'm going to go in a back and forth pattern where I work one direction at a time. When I get up to my embroidery, you can see that I do have to travel stitch a little bit till I get to the next line. Then I'm going to line up my ruler again, quarter inch from the previous stitching line, and stitch on back down. And I'm going to continue to work in this back and forth rhythm until either I go all the way around, or I hit a point where it's just more convenient for me to start working in another direction, because I don't have to break threads, or it's not an awkward place to be. I am using a Wonderfill Invisifill. It's not a monofilament, but nonetheless, it does a really pretty good job of being fairly invisible, leaving just texture for you to see. Okay, the outer portion is pretty much done and been cross-hatched, and I'm ready to go ahead and finish up the cross-hatching in the center part of the quilt design. As you've been seeing, I use both my ruler and the stencil to keep me on track, to keep me honest, keep my things on that quarter or half inch mark. And basically I take little fixed stitches and then I will jump over the various embroidery elements here. Take another couple fixed stitches, jump over my embroidery elements and bring it on down. Jump over, bring it on down. And there's just no positive spin I can put on this. This is just slow going. You just need to take your time, but it's well worth the effort when you're done. You just have to remember to snip your jump stitches when you're done. My advice is to do it sooner as opposed to later. I've never been a real fan of marking, but I'm coming to terms with marking is my friend. It eliminates unpleasant surprises as you get to the end of something like this. You know that everything's gonna line up when you get to the very end, making it such a much more relaxing, stress-free technique that really doesn't take a lot of time. You're just, using the stencil just cuts a few corners and is a real time saver for getting it onto the quilt without having to kind of invest all the labor of measuring it off and marking your quilt the good old-fashioned way. Okay, and now the other thing is if you haven't done so already, you need to invest in a really good pair of snips that you can really get in there, a little curved tip to them, and just kind of pick up and clip them jump stitch. Like I said, do it sooner as opposed to later, or you'll be finding them for years to come. Remember to flip it over and check your back too. All right, now the next thing that I have to do here is I'm going to have to travel around the outside of this flower, kind of stitch in the ditch or outline stitch up to the next line that I need to quilt. And I'm just going to continue to do this and finish up my quilting. Having said that about the outline stitch, I want to mention that I am using 100 weight. It's very similar. It's a polyester, the Invisifill. It's similar to the silk or the monofilament. It makes your stitches just kind of vanish away into the quilt and you see texture instead of thread. It's all about whatever look you're going for. Okay, let me go ahead and finish up this quilting and we'll see you back at the finished project. Okay, here we are with the finished block and I think it looks real nice. Is there mistakes in here or little wibbles? You betcha. But, at the same time, if you really take a chance, a step back and you look at it, it looks pretty darn even. And you'd have to go picking through to find any kind of inconsistencies. And those people that do that are not your friend. My only other regret is this center part that I didn't think ahead to put, some extra batting in there to kind of trapunto this a little bit and just make that area really pop. It would have been really pretty had I done that. I hope that you'll give this technique and using stencils just to help streamline, make your process quick, easy, and accurate. Thanks for watching. Once again, I'm Debbie from the Quilt General. Have a great day.